And we're back again with part 5 of the Meet Your Matches stuff. This is the home stretch, just finishing up with a few of the remaining thoughts that I have here. It's been almost 2 months since this controversial update has dropped, and a lot has been said, a lot has happened within the TF2 community, and a lot has changed as a result of it. The most notable difference between the launch week and nowadays is that the queue times, at least for me, have been improved 100%. It used to take about 5 minutes on average to join a casual server, which was just unacceptable. They've since fine-tuned the way that casual matchmaking systems works to allow people to hop in and out of servers, replacing abandoners with people queuing up pretty much instantly, basically eliminating the huge number of imbalances that we used to have. As a result of this, or maybe just as a result of the system being fine-tuned in general, it never actually takes me longer than 60 seconds to join a casual server. Most of the time it's 30 seconds, and I usually have only around 15 maps selected, so that's an insane improvement, and I've honestly been playing TF2 more than ever as a result. Honestly, I just love the way that casual works now, but there are still a few things that I'd like to see changed. Biggest thing being that you should have the option to stay on the server when the round ends and keep playing on that map with the same people. And the good news about that is Valve actually has communicated to us in a recent blog post saying that the ability to do exactly that is in the works and will be included in a patch soon enough. They even said that they're working on a way to pinpoint your preferred server location, which is great news for me and anyone else who has ever been placed in a server that's on the other side of the world. Hell, I don't even like playing in Virginia servers, and that's in the same country. I am a huge baby, and I hate having ping higher than 75. I know I'm super spoiled. And another small gripe I have is that you can't queue up with more than 6 people for casual for some reason, which is weird because the team size limit is 12, so maybe in the future they can make it so that you can invite up to 12 people to play with you in a casual lobby. And the last thing I'd change about the casual mode is something that I can foresee being a bigger problem in a few months: the experience cap. Right now you can get to 150, but after that you can't really gain any more experience. Well, you can, but it'll just reset you back to rank 1 with no prestige or anything. Right now there are very few people who have made it to 150, but once more and more people get to that point and experience that bug, it will be a hot complaint for a while. I'd say nip it in the bud before it becomes a big deal and either extend the level cap or introduce some kind of prestige program, like where you get a special star next to your name or whatever. I'm already halfway to 150 and I'll be pretty disappointed that I'll lose my pretty badge and get set back to that rank 1 silver coin after all that playtime. So yeah, casual has gotten a lot of great improvements since the launch, which is great, but people forget that the whole point of Meet Your Match was to introduce a competitive game mode in order to test your skills versus other gamers of your magnitude. But unfortunately, the competitive mode hasn't been getting nearly as much medical assistance as the casual one, most likely because naturally less people play in competitive mode. Since the launch, they've improved queue times in competitive and added a reporting system for cheaters and griefers that is apparently working pretty well. But even though they've made it so abandoners lose more experience than if they were to lose a match, as well as increasing the ban sentence for repeat offenders to 6 months, I don't feel like it's enough. Now, I think those punishments are perfect for the abandoner. It definitely makes me never want to even consider abandoning because it just doesn't make sense to. However, the people who are actually punished when someone abandons are the other players on the server. If one person abandons, chances are that they didn't want to be queuing up again anyway, and that's whatever. But the fact that the game ends right then and there and rewards no one with any ELO, even a small amount, as a consolation prize for taking even one round, that can be frustrating for everyone involved, especially if the game has been going on for a long time. So one simple proposition to make this less of a pain for the non-abandoning players is to allow for them to be replaced with other players from the queue as soon as someone leaves. That way the game can continue with only a slight difference in the numbers for a little while. People might think that abandoning would actually just screw over the team that they were playing for, but in my experience, 9 times out of 10, the abandoner leaves because they were already about to lose the game. So I'm pretty confident that abandons wouldn't affect the outcome of the rounds more often than not anyway. So yeah, the abandoning issue is something that still needs to be fine-tuned, and that's the big one. Some other recommended additions that I'm sure will be looked at soon are the weapon rebalances. Those still need to be figured out. The map rotation, there aren't nearly enough Koth maps, and I'm not exactly sure why Swiftwater is in 6v6. Like, it's way too long of a map for such a low player count. And eventually they need to fix the rank cap rolling over to fresh meat if you get past Death Merchant. Placement matches are also something that is basically required to have a legitimate working ranking system, so I hope Valve takes a look at completely reworking the system in that direction. One last thing that I'd personally like to see is the implementation of class limits. Now, this is kind of a topic that I'm noticing is split among a lot of players, and I see some fair reasoning from both sides of the coin on this one, but I personally really dislike playing against teams of all one class, or even something as simple as 2 medics and 2 heavies. 5 scouts and 1 medic basically dominates any medium to low skill players on the 5 CP maps, and I honestly hate solo queuing and seeing 2 spies or 2 snipers on my team. I'm personally in favor of having a class limit of 1. That way it can encourage players to try and get better with multiple classes, since there's no guarantee that you'll be able to pick the same class every time you join a server. So, but I'm not really sure if Valve will ever do this, but it's worked wonders for the competitive community in Overwatch, so I hope that they at least take that example and try it out on their own game. So those are my thoughts on what has come and gone in the weeks leading out from the Meet Your Match launch, and overall I think that I have a pretty positive outlook on where it's headed. Valve is communicating about 10 times more than they've ever communicated before, which is nice for the time being. I just hope they can keep it up even after the current matchmaking problems are solved. But there's one thing that they didn't end up including in the matchmaking launch that a few people were curious about during the beta, and that's this little 9v9 drop-down thing that they had in the queue pretty much the entire time. So this hinted at the possibility that a Highlander game mode would be included in the Meet Your Match update, but of course that never happened, and because of all the instant backlash towards what was included in the update, no one really seemed to notice or care that it wasn't a final feature. After all the outrage had calmed down, a few people have asked me about what I thought about Highlander not being included in Valve's official matchmaking, so I'd like to touch on that subject as well as give my updated opinion on the whole Highlander versus 6v6 thing. So a little backstory for those of you who aren't aware, I actually have played competitive TF2 pretty much exclusively in Highlander for a little over 2 years now, and I honestly have loved all of it. I learned so much about how to play this game through competitive, and I would highly recommend joining a competitive team to anyone who wants to take their TF2 experience to the next step. I think everyone kind of starts out in the competitive scene expecting to meet challenges and people with differing opinions and tastes, and when I first started out in competitive Highlander, I thought I understood everything there is to know about high-level TF2 pretty much after the first 2 seasons of UGC. Yeah, no. There's always going to be something to learn in this game, no matter how long you play, and that's what makes TF2 the best video game ever. The skill ceiling is practically as high as it can go for the first-person shooter genre. And the same goes for what you can learn, and even a year ago, I didn't know half as much as I know now about how to play the game, and I'm starting to realize that I'll probably think I was way undereducated about competitive gaming a year from now. But what I do know now is that Highlander and 6v6 are 2 different game modes with very differing audiences, but the core mindset of players who prefer one over the other is the same. It's the desire to play with and against other people at a high level, and that's what I wanted out of Highlander, and the reason I chose it over 6v6 is because in 6v6 the Engineer is extremely underused. Engineer is my favorite class and I really wanted to play it, but now I understand why it's extremely underused in 6v6. In short, it's because the Engineer is a class that naturally slows the game down. That's essentially the Engi's purpose in TF2, is to create a barricade, and at the highest level of play that can cause horrible stalemates, something that competitive 6v6 has always struggled with, even with the current class limits and weapon bans. So it's hard to explain all of the reasons why I feel differently now about 6v6 and Highlander in a simple way that a lot of you could understand, but the main point is I don't think Highlander is a good game mode for the official competitive TF2. You may remember that I made a video claiming that I thought 6v6 should be second to Highlander, and I have never regretted making a single video in my entire time doing this channel except for that one. And it's because it was all opinions based on my limited experience. No one had explained to me why things were the way they were in 6v6, so I assumed it was all because of spite or indifference. Fast forward to today, and Valve's version of competitive matchmaking is more or less what I want a competitive TF2 metagame to be like. A high-level game where I can play with people who are also trying their best to win and rank up, and I can play the classes that I want to play with no weapon bans. Highlander now seems so restrictive in comparison to me because I can't use the short circuit, it's banned in UGC Highlander, and in a server of 18 players, your kills and deaths don't mean nearly as much, which isn't as rewarding. 6v6 is much simpler to play because your plays mean more. There's higher risk, but there's also higher reward, which is exciting to experience and watch. And yes, being able to watch competitive TF2 and understand what the heck is going on is important nowadays because of the prominence of esports and broadcasted competitive gaming. So in the end, I realized that the main reason that I had even preferred Highlander is simply because I got to play Engineer, which is my favorite class to play in TF2, simple as that. But when it comes to the logistics of the game modes and which one has more relevance in modern gaming in general, 6v6 is a much better format to get behind, and because Valve is allowing the Engineer to play whenever he wants, with whatever he wants, and it's actually pretty damn viable if you know what you're doing, I'm all for playing 6v6 now. I think that Valve and the competitive community need to work together more to create a new standard for this 6v6 format, because as it stands, we're still in this awkward limbo of Valve preferring to have no weapon bans and possibly no class limits for the sake of consistency, and the community playing 6v6 with limited weapons and strict class limits for the sake of a fair, fun, and balanced competitive environment. environment. I think that we need to merge the two and figure out a format that can be the same across all competitive TF2. That way when someone joins a competitive match in-game and they see that they can play as the Pyro with the Power Jack or as the Heavy with the Tomislav, they're not totally confused when they join an ESEA 6's team and wonder why their favorite strategy is forbidden. Of course, this will require that Valve extensively works with the community on figuring out why certain weapons are restricted in our finely tuned competitive format, and then they can figure out how to make them balanced enough to warrant unrestricted use. This is one of the major steps that Valve needs to take in order to get more and more people actually interested in competitive TF2, because it is important to the longevity of this game that more people do so. Believe me, it's not as high profile as a lot of you guys might think. There are leagues and divisions that are for people who have never played competitive TF2 in their lives, and there's no skill cap that you need to reach in order for it to be considered normal for you to get involved in it. If you're interested in joining a competitive TF2 team, it's way easier than you think. I'd consider watching this really awesome video put together by a few of the cornerstone members of the competitive community in order to get some people hyped about what they've been working towards for so long. It's a perfect jumping off point for someone who's been even a little bit interested in joining a team, or at the very least becoming a spectator for a little while. I personally have watched competitive TF2 for at least a year before I actually joined a team, and I already had a huge leg up on my division because of it, since I was already familiar with a lot of the differences between pubs and competitive. Also, this video has a cameo from my bud Scottjaw, so I'm into that. Speaking of spectating, if you want to check out the best teams from around the world compete in the biggest TF2 LAN ever, I actually don't know if that part's true, but it's going to be pretty huge, I highly suggest marking your calendar to watch the Insomnia 58 TF2 Open Championship. And that's going down this Friday through Sunday in Birmingham. The major events will be streamed live all weekend at twitch.tv/TeamFortressTV. I know I will be there pretty much the entire time, and I'll be putting out announcements on my Steam group to get some of you guys in there and see what the best TF2 players in the world can do. It's been an amazing event every year, and this year should be no different. So please come and watch and represent TF2 on Twitch. Let's try and get TF2 to the front page of Twitch's game list. We have to at least try and beat out Minecraft for Gaben's sake. I mean, come on. But all jokes aside, I hope you guys enjoy watching the I-58 tournament along with me this weekend, and I also hope you guys liked hearing my opinions and rants for the commentary about the Meet Your Match update these last few weeks. I got a lot of positive feedback about a lot of these things, and guess what? Pyro won the war, so it looks like we might be getting a few of those flamethrower changes after all. So how do I know that? Well, Valve sure likes leaving hints here and there, and they left a pretty big hint in the War's Winners announcement page. So that's pretty exciting. Maybe Valve will do the right thing? Who knows? I certainly won't be holding my last breath. Okay, so before I make any of you unsubscribe to me due to terrible puns, thanks so much for watching, and I will talk to you nieces and nephews next time. Bye-bye.
YouTube channel. Why are you trying to advertise your YouTube channel if it's pretty bad?
I have a YouTube channel. Just check it out. It's Uncle Dane.
It's probably horrible and you should just stop advertising.
Oh,
I'll check it out in a minute.
Oh, hell yeah.